Give a round of applause for our panelists so they can go through. All right. So, this is how this is going to get structured and organized tonight, guys. So, right about now, I'm going to ask the panelists some questions, and they're going to give some feedback and their response to it. Like I said, if y'all feel some type of way towards the end, y'all going to have your opportunity to ask them questions, and they're going to respond. So, the way we're going to do that, if y'all got like a question to ask or anything, information, just like raise your hand. And then I'm gonna come out there, give you a microphone, you stand up, introduce yourself, and state your question. Sound good, everybody? Sound good, everybody? That's cool? Yeah. All right, so we all ready? All right, we're gonna kick it off with the first question. We're gonna start down there at the end. So, what are your perceptions of African Americans and Africans?
All right, well, my perception of African Americans is that we're a very varied group. There's no one type of African American because all of us are in different kind of, extracurricular groups on campus, and even within those groups, even though we share the same goal, you meet completely radically different people with different mindsets and different goals. So, an African American can be anything, can be anyone. Well, that's, African descent, you know what I'm saying? But, even if we don't necessarily have a lot in common, we can come together either around the fact that we're Black or around the fact that we have certain things that make us phenomenal. Like, we got National Society of Black Engineers in the back. And I'm a part of that. I'm a part of the Society of African American Studies. And and those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. You don't have to be an engineer to do social work. You can do anything that you put your mind to. And as for Africans, unfortunately, we aren't taught enough in school, and and we don't know enough, we don't interact enough with a lot of Africans because, Africa's a real long way, and I can't put on plane tickets right now. So, we learn what we can from the people that we meet, and it goes a long way to breaking the stereotypes that have already been built up. And that's my opinion on that.
Just kind of piggyback on what Joe just said. Yeah, we're all different, but we're all like. We're all like, because we're all African. We're all Black. And I find that when you come to a university such as Mississippi State, which is PWI, we tend to gravitate towards each other. So I feel like our perception is, even though we're all different, we gravitate towards each other just like we look the same. So he's gonna at least go through the same hardships that I'm gonna go through.
From an outsider's point of view, before I came to the States, my perception of African Americans was mainly based on what the media showed, and I think most of you guys would probably agree that sometimes it wasn't always positive, most times actually. We'd see like a lot of crime and violence and racism and stuff like that, but we know deep down that African Americans that's not an accurate portrayal of them actually. And what I see is a bunch of people who, even through the physical and mental oppression, they still persevere to create a better life for themselves and for the children. And that's what I see here, and all you guys prove that it's a great community out here and great culture. And for Africans, it's sort of the same thing. You don't really see a lot of African culture in the media. The portrayals aren't always accurate, and not everybody can go there and see it for themselves. And I think that's why events like this are so important to bridge the gap and educate everyone on both sides.
So my perception of Africans are like, when you think of an African, you think of rural, right? You think of huts, but in reality it's both. You have the traditional Africans that are still like, indigenous. Then you have the Africans that are urban now with houses, and they have their culture, but they just put urbanization on it, okay? When you think of African Americans, you think of us in different classes. You got like the poor African Americans, the ghetto ones, the country ones, and the sophisticated ones, So I feel like there's a divide there in both cultures, but at the same time, like he said, we all gravitate towards one another on a day. You know what I mean? Like usually, like you come to the stage, the first people you're around are black. You know, blacks in association, like you're around black people. So that's how I see it.
I think most of what has been said just captures it. I just want to add the fact that everyone has said that we tend to gravitate towards each other, which is true. And the reason for that is because we share a commonality. The commonality goes beyond difference in spaces. For example, someone coming from Africa is from Africa, someone living in America is from America, all that. Blacks in the Caribbean islands and all. It seems that there are different spaces and there are different histories. But I conceive it as not different histories, but discontinued history. We all are from the African ancestry. The ancestry is Africa, therefore the reality is Africa. So my perception is that our history is beyond the skin, it's in the blood. So my perception is built on the reality that does not exist on what we can see alone, but what is written in our skin, which is the history of our commonality. So the skin is there, we have different shades of color here, but you see the history of the blood is written beneath the skin. And when we think about it from that reality, we'll see the tendency that makes us want to gravitate towards each other, because we have a long, rich history that is written beyond just what we can see physically, or something internal here.
All right, so my background is a little bit unique. So I grew up in the US, but my immediate family is from Uganda. So that includes my mom, my older brothers, everything. And as far as Africans, I went home for the first time at the age of 6. So instead of getting information from the media, as that was said before, I got a first-hand experience of what Africa is like, the beauty in it, the food in it, the rich culture. So I had my own experiences to possibly combat the negative perceptions about Africa, and people would ask me questions growing up in North Dakota for about 10 years, what it's like in Africa, and I'd be happy to share them. So that was a beautiful thing, and I'm lucky to have the privilege to go to Africa, particularly Uganda, which is my home. As far as African Americans, so North Dakota, I want to say, is at least 95% white, or at least the time I went there. So growing up the only black kid in school, it was kind of weird because I had a duality, like I was African, but they wanted me to fit black African. So I would say as far as African Americans, I didn't really have like a buddy or a friend, or I didn't have that first-time experience until I came to the South, I want to say in 2014. And I want to say that, as said before, it's complex. There's not really one type of African Americans. So I think that my exposure here has taught me kind of the identity, what it means to be a black African American, not just an immigrant, kind of like I was as African. And I would say that it's, for the most part, I had a positive experience with my relations with African Americans. We both value food, community. Even though our stories may not be exactly the same, there's some sort of struggle in there. We take pride in our success stories having come out of that struggle, and who we are, and we value community. So it's been interesting, but also an enlightening experience for both sides.
All right. Okay. So that was our first question there, but something I have got to add in the beginning. Panelists, throughout the questions, you don't have to, answer unless you feel like, we're still gonna go down the road. So like, if you want to answer, it's completely up to you. And for the crowd, like the questions that are being asked and the responses they give, it can be something informational, it can be something, they can help you, carry outside of it. So, just take it all in from this. So that's my little side. All right. Second question. What are some microaggressions you have faced regarding your culture or identity?
Well, I guess for me being African American and being an engineer, just the stereotype that if you're African American, you're not supposed to be smart. So if like if you see that, you see it from both sides. So from like people who aren't black, it's kind of like, oh, he's, I don't know, but if you like, say me and Joseph are in the class, and like we just chilling, whatever. If we get our test back, he may like to see I'm at an A, and like, oh, you white, you smart, you know what I mean? Like, you get that a lot. Like people be like, you know, I know I get a lot. Like it's just that's microaggressions. Is like because I'm African American, I'm expected to be dumb. By me being smart, like I'm somehow breaking the mold and being different from what an African American is supposed to be. So I just experience that. I say pretty regularly.
Yeah, I was just right about that, especially growing up. People sort of, even within the African American community, because it's what's been portrayed in the media and what's been brought up with us, they assume that, you know, people like, you know, like to read, just on the street all day, yada, yada, yada. But, and then when you do sort of, quote unquote, go against the grain, white people and black people sort of come down here for it. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you really change who you are because of it. But coming to the BWI is where, well, I grew up in Jackson. You know, I went to Chestnut, I went to Murrah. I was surrounded by black people my entire life. So coming to Mississippi State, BWI, you know, and even here, it's a little strange because when you go walk to class, you see a good mix of black and white people. But like at other PWIs, you see nothing but white people. You don't really see representation of yourself. But even here, you know, I'm walking to class and whatnot. And then, you know, white lady grab my purse, like I'm gonna steal something from her. And like, or a white dude, you know, like, sort of move to the other side of the sidewalk. I'm like, hold on to your A6, bro. Like, it's fine. I'm not gonna rob you for nothing. So, it's just certain stuff like that. And then maybe you get in an Uber somewhere and like, some music was playing and they just switched to rap just because they assume you like rap. And, I mean, I do, but that's not the point. But yeah, it's just the fact that, you know, you're assuming a lot of things about who we are as people just based off of media or just seeing it once. And, you know, it's slightly different because, you know, you got colorism on top of that and like people want to intimidate people with like dreads or twists or whatnot. So it's just, you gotta remember that even though you may not be a threat, you look like a threat to certain people. And that's something I had to learn.
Just to add on top of that, I sort of feel the same way every now and then. If I approach someone and the first thing they'd probably see from me is tall, dark skinned. I don't know what they see or what's going on in their head, but usually when I say something, they have the surprised look on their face, like they didn't expect me to sound like that. And every once in a while I get the question, where are you from? Or you don't sound like you're from here. And I sort of feel like that's mainly because of the way I speak. And like I'm not from here, and most of you guys can probably tell. But like you said, that's not the point. Another form I've seen quite often as an athlete is people attributing my success to my genetics, and I think although that's like a big part, I would agree that's not the main reason why I've been successful in my sport. It's, they sort of disregard the hard work and dedication that I put to my craft, and just hearing if I had your genetics, I would have been this way, or just anything like that. That sort of it has a really negative connotation to me, and that's just one example.
I want to add to Marco real quick. If y'all don't know, Marco just won the Worlds. He got 7th in the world for that 100 meters. But the microaggressions I experienced were basically growing up, I was considered white. So for instance, the schools I went to were predominantly black, but every honor class for some reason had straight white people, and I was in there. And for me, seeing that was kind of like, am I really white? Like, 'cause I didn't look at it as like a race thing. I looked at it as being black means you're dumb, you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of stupid though, because that's not how my mama raised me, you know? But another form of microaggression I've experienced too, or I've seen too, is how they say black girls are very opinionated and they have attitudes. And I feel like that is false. I believe black girls just know what they want. I don't think they're always opinionated or have an attitude. I believe they know exactly what they want. I see you, Jazz.
Okay, I would share a story that happened to me just the day I arrived in America, at the JFK airport, actually. So of course, I was checking in for my next flight to Mississippi, and the lady on the counter, of course, hearing my accent, she knew I was not African American, and she asked, "Where are you from?" "Well, I'm from Nigeria." And she said, "You're from Africa?" I said, "No, I'm from Nigeria, not Africa." And she said, "Well, how do I know that?" I said, "Well, there are more than 50 countries in Africa, and there are many languages in Africa. So I'm from Nigeria, not Africa. And then she started to probe further. So what I realized is, well, I came to do my master's in what discipline? In English. Interesting. So you speak English? Well, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I said, I acquired English. I didn't even learn it. So I started speaking English when I was this small. And she was in awe. And then she asked, so what kind of research do you do? I said, well, I'm interested in Black memory across the global diaspora. So I study history of slavery, the different forms of violence and representations of Blackness. And she started crying. I'm not making this up. She started crying, she was shedding tears. And she said, I've not seen a young person this informed from where I do not know. And that just meant a lot to me. Not because there are no young, informed people in Africa, but because people do not know. And there's this perception that when you're from Africa, Africa is like a village, as they have said. Many people say, oh, you're from Africa. But one of the things I do, and I constantly do, is to insist I'm not from Africa. Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent. The third biggest continent, I think I'm right. Yeah. So I thought, and I had to deal with that too at some point. I had to tell people, I kept explaining to people, I acquired English just like you, but I'll correct your grammar because I learned it and I know what I know, you know. Sometimes you have to assert yourself. So those are just the things I can point to.
My experiences weren't as huge as that. But as far as microaggressions growing up, again, I came from North Dakota, so I was there for a really long time. And I would get a lot of questions, particularly ones that would bother me would be ones about my hair. So it's a striking difference. I'm natural now, so I became natural once I came to Mississippi, being more comfortable with my natural hair. But before I was natural, I was relaxed. Not promoting any which way, but even as relaxed, I remember we were on the playground, it was like a windy day, so I had my headband in, and I had my relaxed hair, and it kind of like flew up in an afro. I remember consciously trying to like pat it down, and then even if I was like patting it down as best as I could, I would get like questions, like particularly from the girls in class, and be like, "Why is your hair so big?" And like, "Do you hairspray it?" And like, "Why is it so poofy?" So of course, to them, like probably weren't familiar with that texture, but then I was getting microaggressions about my hair, being kind of like making me uncomfortable with my hair texture, which is gone away now, but that was like one experience. And the second one was that I used to ice skate when I was in North Dakota. So as a young child, like around 8 or 9, we had like these ranks or these levels. So like if you were good enough in your rank to go on to the next one, the coach would be like, okay, like say you go on to the next level. I just remember these 2 girls, don't remember their names, but they were struggling on some of the core like concepts in that level before going on to the next one. But then like the next week for class, I saw them being passed on to the next level, and then I was confident in my skills, and I like stayed behind, and I was just like, what's going on? I didn't like outwardly say it, but I think there was one person who saw what was going on, and she said, Angela, like, you don't need to be here, like, go on. So that was kind of not a microaggression, but something you see and you realize that it's not really based on your skill level, but or like the content of care, but like basically like how you look like, and they're not seeing like what you can do, but they're seeing like what their biases are against you. So those are 2 cases where I just experienced some discrimination.
Okay. All right, that's some good responses we have so far, y'all. Let's continue on. The next question we have is, do you see aspects of your culture in the present day? I can repeat the question. You need to. All right.
Maybe start from
Okay, so I do see aspects of culture, African culture in present day. I'm a dancer. I love to dance. A lot of y'all know that about me if you know me. If you look at our cultural dances, things we do like popping and locking and stuff, that actually comes from Africa. I like to bring this up all the time, but the Ethiopians, they have this form of dance called Esketa, and like they do like the shoulder popping thing. Like that's like basically popping and locking. A form of African dance they do is like they basically are twerking, but like it's like this thing they do with their arms is really cool, and like they're moving their bodies, and like it's a form of ritual. It's not derogatory, you know. I know we kind of make things derogatory, but at the same time it's our culture too. So like a lot of our trends and fashions develop from that. And to add, that happened because in Africa, during the slave trade times, we were taken from our homeland, of course, and we were placed in America, but we never lost our traditions. It was just changed over the time. That makes sense? So it was changed over the time. We just developed into what we know and what we like. We went on to our own thing. You know, I think. Yeah. So.
I can talk about this all day, but for the sake of time, I will be specifically talking about food. I did a research on food, African culinary heritage in the South, and I did a presentation sometime in May. Yeah, in May. Okay, so one specific food I'll talk about is rice and beans. Rice and beans has been referred to as the transnational food of the African motherland. And the reason being that rice and beans was one of the vestiges of enslavement. So the first set of slaves were brought to the South were from Senegambia. And this actually was the place where the African rice, the variety called Oryza glaberrima, was planted. They were experts in planting that variety of rice. So one of the reasons they brought them to South Carolina was that for planting rice. And South Carolina today, for those of us who know, they have plantations of rice. So the wealth of South Carolina is in part built on that. I'm not going there now. What I'm going is this. So they came with that. Many of them, historical facts have it that some of them, with their hairs, they brought rice seeds woven in their hair. So when they got to America, these were the things they planted. And because they were deprived of food, so they cooked rice and beans, the variety of Africa. And as you said, it seems different today. That's because over the years, cultural appropriation has affected it. You see, when a language or when a material aspect of culture enters into new environments, it takes up the realities of the environment. So what you might find is a variety of it. But actually, rice and beans is, well, historically, back and forth is about 3,500 years in age. Before Asian rice, River Sativa came, there was African rice. And that was what the enslaved people used as staple to eat. And today is now what is so popular in the South and different aspects. So when you then think about rice and beans, when rice and beans is served on your table and you eat, as an African American, as a white, what you remember is not just the food, what you remember is the history of African people brought to this land, history of people who have contributed to the wealth of this land in that sense of it.
So I can talk about the media and music and entertainment and how that kind of question again.
Let's see. Do you see aspects of your culture in the present day?
So I would say yes. I would say artists that I listen to back home, Ugandan artists, Ugandan pop stars like Eddie Kenzo and Be Cool, have like come and made trips to like New York and major cities in the U.S. But also as far as looking at the popularity of West African music and how you hear it on radio stations, like hip hop radio station, Joanna, forgot who sings it. African music is booming, and you have collaborations with hip hop artists such as Drake and a few others who are taking an interest in it and kind of bringing it to the mainstream. Before it was something I would just listen to at house parties, but now like you get people coming from the U.S. also taking interest in it, and it was really cool to see. And then also a huge one would probably be the latest Marvel movie, Black Panther. So that was a huge one, and just seeing all the trends online and dance videos that came from that and movements and discussions just coming from that movie is a big one.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, as an African American, I definitely see our culture in the present day due to the fact that in America, everything has been built off black people, off of African Americans. So wherever you look, especially today, you see blackness because if you take, for music, rap is still pop, but like anything that, like pop is dying, and all of the new real pop artists have been people like Drake, Future, all the rap artists that we've been listening to, and everything culture-wise, fashion-wise, has been black people. And there's this thing where the people who are in power will try to take certain things that we've already created and sort of market it to people who know nothing about it. So like take the real large box sprays trend in white people and all that. But people have been doing that for years. But it's a reason, it's a protective style, and it looks good on white people. And once you do that to a white person's hair, their hair fall out. Like you're doing something that you know nothing about, you know no research about, you just want to take it and just put it on because you think that it looks nice on us. So our culture is everywhere, and never forget that because we made rock and roll, we made the blues, we made all of that. Fashion, we've been doing that for centuries. Like anything that has worth been doing, we've done it the best. So you can see that rampant everywhere.
Yeah, so in terms of African culture, I'm seeing more and more of it every day, and that makes me really happy as not just as an African, but as a human being. Like just, I think it's really important that we draw inspiration from other cultures. Some people call it appropriation. I think it becomes appropriation when you start taking credit for it or acting like you created it. Like I said, it's really important to draw inspiration from other cultures and use it and create new stuff out of it. But it's also really important to remember where they came from, because I guess if you know where it came from, then you'll always know where to go next.
Last thing I want to add is genetics too. So when you look at genetics, we're 13% of the American population, African Americans, right? But for some reason we dominate in every sport. Do you know what that is? During slavery times, they used to breed us to be strong. They never bred us to be weak. They wanted us to be strong when they sold us, so we became a strong race. That's why you have a skinny boy like me that can actually run track here because I'm fast enough to do that. You know what I'm saying? So it just happened.
Of course, another thing that one I also refer to is religious practices. I'm sure many people know this in places like Louisiana. There are parts of Louisiana where there's a whole lot of investment in African traditional religion, and it's as huge as it is in some places back in Africa. So when you even see the articulation of some people's view and the philosophies, their philosophies of religion, of God, it stems from the religious practices in Africa. Ogun, Shango, many of these pantheon, they call it pantheon, in Africa, are rehashed and they are worshipped in different parts of America. So it straddles both the material aspect of the culture and the immaterial one. It straddles both the physical and the psychic realm or the spiritual realm.
More response before we keep going? Alright, okay, good. I like your response the first time. It sounded like I got closer because talking about rice and beans. I can for sure vouch for that. For sure. Because I know I cook rice and beans all the time. Green beans. So you know what I'm talking about. Last time we cooked that meal, we had some rice and green beans and fried chicken. You know that. Alright, so we're gonna keep this going. Alright, next question.
Okay, so what is your cultural history and background?
Hello. Alright. Well, for me, personally, me being African American, what we're taught in school is pretty much our history starts with slavery. And we brought over here, and then that's where our history books pick up. And then they give us little details, and they brush over everything, and next thing you know, we're free. Like, that's pretty much how they teach it at school. In history class in like elementary school, it's slavery, they brush over it because it's a bad part. You know, it's bad time. You're not gonna talk about the government like that. The government's not gonna push, that stuff down our throats. They'll brush over it and then talk about all the good they've done. So for me personally, like as far as my family, the only history I have is up right, like when we become free, that's where my history starts. That's as far back as I can go. So like, I don't really know like where I come from as far as other than Alabama. Like my family, we were slaves in Alabama, and we became free. We got 40 acres in the middle of Alabama. That's as far back as I go. I don't know where I come from after, like before that or anything. I feel like you're gonna make an assumption here. I feel like as far as African Americans, that's a lot of us. We don't really know where we come from. We know like our history is tied to the states. We don't know the motherland. We don't know where we're from. We don't know where we originated from. I feel like that's a problem.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as RJ. I'm from Mississippi. That's all I know. My mom's from here. My dad's from like down south by Alcorn, and that's just. And I took in 10th grade. We had to do a family tree, and class full of black kids, with black teacher. I don't know why he made us do this. I went down to the archives, tried to find like where my people was and all that. I asked my dad, I asked my mom, and I could only go back to my great grandmother. And literally everybody in the class was the same way. We were all, except for the one white kid in the class, and he could like go all the way back. And it really like showed all of us that like slavery has had a very big impact on us. And statistically, every African American who's descended from slaves is 25% white. So my grandmother is half white, and you have to sort of realize that like most of our last names are white last names. My last name is Irish. That means that some Irish do own my ancestors. So at best, we can say that, like RJ was saying, we're very tied to the States, but that doesn't mean that our ancestors didn't do everything they could to pass down what culture they had. Because, like we were saying earlier, it's just been transformed into something new that's become African American culture. You can very clearly see the connections between those. Because my favorite connection is like Mohead and jigging. It looks very much like certain African dances, and it's something that once you realize that you're not as far removed as you think, then you're more willing to do more research. Like personally, I probably never know what country my ancestors came from or whatever. Realistically, they would have come from a bunch of different countries because they would have had a bunch of different slaves from a bunch of different countries on one plantation, speaking all these different languages, and it just becomes a melting pot of we have to coexist, we have to be together because we're black and they don't care what we are, who we are, what culture we have. So we have to care about it, and we have to come together and pass it on to our children. So.
Yeah. Before I get to my culture, I just wanted to say I think it's sort of frustrating that African Americans had their African identity stripped away from them when they brought to this land, and then even to this day they're still called African American, but they don't really know where in Africa they're from. I think that's a huge problem. If all you know is your history starting from America, why not just call yourself American and not African American? I just don't understand that. My culture, which could possibly be any one of yours, if you really go back down the line. I'm from Dinka. I'm one of the Dinka people in South Sudan. But this is before, I guess, colonization. It dates back to as far as 3000 BC. You'll find, I guess, evidence of our culture. We sort of lived along the Nile River in northeastern Africa. Our popular hobbies were fishing and traveling just on foot and living in not so much villages, but more so just camping and moving around very often. And we're still here to this day. There's over 1 million, almost 2 million Dinkas still living in Africa and close to South Sudan. After colonization in Sudan, we declared independence in the 50s from the British Empire, and 50 years, for the next 50 to 60 years, there's been like a civil conflict between both the Arabs from the north and the blacks from the south, and that's just an example of one of the cultural conflicts that have been going on way before Europeans have reached the continent. Like, it wasn't always peaceful down there. There's also wars that went on within the people of the nation. But yeah, so in 2011, South Sudan declared independence from North Sudan, and we became the youngest groups in South Sudan that are still fighting against each other. I think they have the control of the government right now, but there's other cultural groups such as Anwar, and they're the main group in opposition. But there's so many different cultures in Africa. I know people like to say African culture, but I think it's important to, I guess, I don't want to go too far with it. If you keep dividing the cultures and until they're each separate groups, you can keep going on forever, and it'll only separate us apart. I think it's important to create your own distinctions and your own identities, but at the same time, I think it's more important that we find the similarities between us and what brings us together.
So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about me before I get into my actual Roosevelt culture. I am African American, of course, but my mom's mom was Cherokee and Black. My mom's dad was Cherokee and Black. My dad's dad is African American from South Carolina, and my dad's mom was Jamaican, Irish, and Scottish, born and raised in Jamaica. So I grew up with the cultural identity of not only the Cherokee, but Black and Jamaican. And the one I took on the most was African American, because that's the people I was around the most, and that was my family. But I also took on the Jamaican side. So speaking from Jamaica, Jamaica's, we basically, how to explain it? So the first people in Jamaica were indigenous people. They were called the Arcanos, I believe. And the Arcanos came in, and the Spanish came in and killed all the Arcanos off and took over Jamaica. And during that time, they brought in slaves from Africa, from West Africa, and this was the beginning of the slave trade in the 1400s, I believe. So after that happened, they ruled for about 100 years, and then the British came in, and they wiped, they basically kicked the Spanish out, but they didn't take the slaves because those slaves ran to the hills. And these hills were basically mountains, and they were called maroons. So in the mountains, they resided and they lived peacefully as the British Empire reigned down below. So what happened from there was the British brought thousands and thousands of African slaves. This was like the peak of the slave trade, and like it was so vast that every Black person outnumbered one British person in 3. So when that happened, they had a reign for a while also. The next step that happened was they tried to take over the Maroons, those people that escaped to the mountains, and they couldn't do that because they were on the high. So if you're higher and people try to come up and you're lower, the higher people have the advantage, and they won. So there was 2 wars called the Maroon Wars that happened in Jamaica. After that, the slaves got tired and they actually kicked they kicked the British out of Jamaica, and we gained our independence about 66 years ago. How this ties to me is basically I am all these cultures in one. In Jamaica, you have parts called the Ocho Rios, so that's a part of Jamaica. That's from the Spanish, from the Spanish rule. Then you have parts of Jamaica that are Hispanic. That are British names. We have British customs within our tradition. For instance, when we say the days of the week, we say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The British say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's how we speak, you know? So it's just like their culture comes into it too.
Before I get into talking about my culture, which I'm spending a long time on, what 2 points, basically. I think in order to pay some respect to the history of slavery and the enslaved people, let's sometimes, instead of us to say slaves, let's call them enslaved people. Now that's the scholarship of slavery now, because calling them slaves would mean that there is enslaved people would show that they were forced. Okay, so most often when you're speaking to people generally and you're talking about this very sensitive issue, try not to use slaves, say enslaved. They didn't go there by their will, they were enslaved. And that's the first thing, is just paying respect to them. And the second thing is, and I sympathize with what you mentioned about not knowing history, not knowing identity, the background. I think this is a big issue. And it's not just for African Americans, of course. The case, not just for African Americans or even Caribbeans, the case is far distinct. Even for Africans, what one would notice over time is many Africans who are in Africa do not know the history of Africa beyond the period of colonization, which again is a reductionism in the way we perceive ourselves. Okay, so to really create, to know your identity, our identity as Africans, our history did not start from colonization. There was Africa before colonization, far, far before colonization. Okay, so the onus is on us to
trying to dedicate our time to knowing who I was before the coming of the white man. Chinua Achebe said, the white man came to tell us who we are. It's not as if we did not know who we are, but in their wisdom, okay, they thought they could tell us who we are. So, but it's part of the resistance to the narratives of who they said we are. So that's just it. So as I said, sympathize with the history. I read the biography of someone. He had to spend about 15 years to trace his history back to Africa. Now, it's that complex because history, again, has done a lot of disservice to reducing the identity of people. Now, that being said, I'm a Yoruba boy. I'm from Nigeria. And I just thought, should I say the history of Nigeria? Should I say the history of the Yorubas? But I think I'll just conflate them. So, Nigeria is a country in West Africa. Before colonization, Nigeria was made up of great kingdoms, the Benin Empire, the Oyo Empire, the Kingdom of Yonri. This was about 1000 BC. Okay, so they existed. These empires existed, and they were self-sufficient in themselves. Okay, so it was around the 15th century that the Portuguese came. They brought Christianity to Nigeria. Well, not Nigeria, then they brought Christianity to that region. And after that, in about 1830 something, yeah, there was an invasion in the part of what's called Nigeria now. And in 1865, Nigeria then was designated as a protectorate, but was divided into the southern and the northern protectorate. But in 1901, yeah, that was when it became a British protectorate. But in 1914, there was an amalgamation, Lord Lugard, and Nigeria was given the name Niger area, Nigeria. What we know it today as. So, even the name was a colonial formation. Of course, I'm not saying Nigeria should change the name. So, that is it. What I'm trying to get at is this: the Oyo Empire was thousands of years before colonization. And fun fact, some of the items that were taken from the Benin Empire are still in the British Museum today. So when we start talking about resisting, we don't only resist by what we also resist by making them know that you claim that Africans are this or Africans don't have beauty, history, heritage, yet you keep some of the history, the artifacts that were produced in some of these places. I have a friend who's an archaeologist. He's in Cambridge. He's a professor in Cambridge, and all he does is glass beads in Ife before colonization. And wow. So the history is rich. It's before colonization, it's beyond colonization. And we need to always keep that in mind. And your history as African Americans is beyond slavery. It's before slavery.
So identity is very important, and I'm lucky to have known where I come from, or where I originated from. So in Uganda, there's very many tribes. I cannot list them all, to name a few: Busoga, Chapadola, Bigasu. There's so many. But as far as we link them into groups, so my mom's side, she comes from the Bantu group, so that's a Gishu, and then my dad is from the Luo group, which is also said where Amana's father came from. So because we have the Luo group, even though Uganda, and we go into geographies on the eastern part of Africa, borders Kenya, so some of the groups are like across the borders. So I'm from the eastern side, so that's why the Luo group borders Kenya, and that's where that relation comes from. So that's on my dad's side. Uganda is also a young country. It was colonized by the British. The British colonized us, but in October 9th, about 57 years ago, we became an independent country. So our political history is very interesting, but I should not go into that for that time. So that's my cultural history.
That's good. That's truly amazing, you all. And I wish I had a story to share. Seriously. I grew up being raised that everybody's my cousin. So, it's not any type of way you cannot tell me that Monte Ellis is my cousin. My mama raised him, you know what I'm saying? He was in my house. I wasn't around, I wasn't alive at the time, so she used to tell me those stories. So, of course, I'm believing to this day Monte Ellis is my cousin. Of course he ain't, but you know, but it's just stuff like that. You know, I don't, you know, it would be interesting to know my history and my background, but at the same time, it's just now, it's a long, it's a, I can go on all day. It's just, I can't even tell you, I don't know my history. I don't want to share that story yet. But, we gonna keep this last question kind of short for the sake of time. So, like maybe 2 or 3 of y'all want to answer this last question. Last question.
The last question is, what are some differences in accents and dialects between Africans and African Americans?
Oh yeah. One thing is how we form our words. I mean, obviously that's what accent and dialect is, but listening to me speak, RJ speak is two very different things. Cause I sound like Jackson, and somebody had to tell me that when I came up here. Like I sound like I'm from Jackson, and I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what does it mean anything?" So then I listened to how we speak, how me and my cousin speak, and all that, and I realized, yeah, I do. Now I always sound like nigga Ali. Well, a few of y'all, but. I sound like the South. I sound like people who hold the door for you. Like I sound like fried chicken. Like I sound like people eating rice and sausage on Sunday. Like that's what you have to connect yourself to. And people in the North, they speak real fast and like sharp, and it's like, what do you say? How are you doing? And then all this other stuff, and they slightly rude. Well, they're not really even rude. They just about their business. But we just more relaxed. That's why our words go a little longer. That's why we like let some of the consonants at the end go. We don't need all that. But if you're from the North, then you can keep all your letters. I don't know what that means, but that's what it sounds like.
So I'm not gonna speak from African American culture. I'm gonna speak from the Jamaican culture. So in Jamaica, again, I told you earlier that we have a mixture. It's a Creole basically. It's a mixture of English, French, British. But we took those dialects and made it to our own. So like for instance, if I say, "Oh, I forgot how many times in a bed and near bed full," you didn't understand what I just said. "No, I go home, I lay down, church in a bed and near bed full."
I can beat that. I can say something she ain't never heard before.
So, you want to go home,
You wanna go home?
I lay down,
Lay down.
church in a bed.
Get in the bed. Straight to your bed.
Now I'm talking about.
And me, I'm belly full. So I'm eating, me, I'm used to eat belly full. But my can't come out after the open for sleep after us come, my friends soon come. So you see, like, I just basically said my friends coming over, so I have to sweep out my house or something. So like basically, like I'm just saying that the culture is different. The culture is different. So like when you think of African American, you see Ebonics, you see a different dialect. But Jamaican, we have our own culture, our own style, just the same in Africa too. They have their own culture and style and whatnot. So, but at the end of the day, we all black and one. What's up, man?
I'm trying to catch what you said.
No, but this is my question.
That's dope. I was gonna respond by saying you feel me. That's my language.
I think the general thing is when it comes to dialects and accents, one of the things we need to learn, and of course we also avoid microaggressions, is the fact that language takes up the realities of its environment. Okay, so the fact that we speak English in Nigeria, we speak English in Ghana, but when Ghanaians speak, it's different from the English Nigerians speak. Now, it doesn't mean Nigeria's English is superior to Ghanaian English. It doesn't mean Australian English is superior to Canadian English. They speak different dialects, they speak different varieties of English, and it's the way language is. Not just language, any aspect of material culture. When culture enters into an environment, it picks up the realities, the context. So contexts define aspects of our language. Cooking, dancing, different things. So we must not attempt to justify superiority when it comes to accents, to dialects, language. No, those things don't work. Some people will want to force us to do that, but no, we are more intelligent than that. Accents, languages, just communicates. It reflects your culture. Language is culture. Language is the window to the world. So it's a reflection of who you are. Own it. whatever your accent is, whatever your dialect is.